everyone. Welcome to our first LCF discussions. We're just going to be having a very casual conversation, talking about various topics, discussing our experiences and our thoughts. And we're very pleased to also have with us Kamalakiran from the US, as well as Sahana, Sasanka, and Bhargav. So hi, guys. Yeah, maybe we can start just by talking about our experiences learning music, especially, living outside of India. So I guess there's kind of three parts to it. There's your direct, how you learn directly from your guru. That can be in class where, they teach you something and you repeat, and see that there's that section. And then there's also listening to music. And then there's also interactions that you have with just speaking to your guru, speaking to people kind of your level, and speaking to your senior musicians that you perform with. So I guess those are kind of three parts that, help you learn music. So we can probably start by talking about listening and how to listen, because I think that's very important. So for me, I'll start. And for me personally, when I'm listening, I can't kind of have somebody playing in the background and me doing something else. Like, it really doesn't work like that. I kind of have to sit and
actively listen rather than passive listening.
Yeah. Because I think there's some people kind of sit and then they hit pause and they try and repeat what they're listening to. But for me, I think the whole experience of being transported from that whole listening experience and then coming out of it, and that inspiration and that motivation to just sit, practice and explore, I think that is kind of what I feel is not more important, but it's how I do it. And I think that's what benefits me the most. So how you guys listen, how do you incorporate that into your daily routine and also your practice routine? Is that different? Like, do you have a separate listening session, or is it, how does that work? How do you guys listen?
So I guess I'll get started. So with listening, for me, I think there's so many different types of listening, and you can't merge them together because, well, you have to listen for specific, what you want to achieve specifically by the end of that session. So many times for me, there is a passive listening going on. I do listen specifically every day for hours, usually at night after I'm done with everything. You would expect that's like, oh, you're sleeping and listening, but that's usually when I'm actually listening and like properly taking ideas. Or many times it's not like a conscious taking of ideas, it's just listening and something will happen at that time and never know what it is. That's like my actual listening time, and really there's no end goal for me other than, okay, I want to listen to this artist today and see what that does to me. So if I'm listening to MDR's Giripe or something and I listen to it and I feel like playing Sahana, or I feel like doing anything with Sahana after that, then that'll automatically happen. It's not something I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, he did this Sangati, let me try to. That also exists, especially now, COVID, and I know we're going to be mixing so many topics together, but especially now when you don't get to accompany, I found that I can accompany Alatur or MDR or Shamangudi whenever I really want. That's a different type of experience, because even then there's not really anything I'm trying to achieve other than just having that experience of accompanying. Many times I'll just put on the earphones and I'll just play over the violinist sometimes, or sometimes I'll listen to the violinist pause and play, and I just have fun with that. But a lot of the time with passive listening, you'll be surprised when it's going on in the background and you're studying for an exam. I can study and listen to music. I can do a bunch of things, and music is always there in the background. And then the next day I would have picked up some Karnaka or something that I didn't really know I was picking up. So I think that not having time to listen, of course, this doesn't work for everyone because some people can't listen and do like multitask. But if you're able to multitask, I think it's good to have it in the background, because you never know what gets picked up subconsciously.
You absorb it in a different kind of way. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then of course there's listening to achieve a specific purpose. So, if I listen to the Sahana of Ramnath Krishnan and MDR and, 6 other artists, it's trying to get ideas for Sahana, or if I'm trying to, figure out a pattern that TNS has sung in something, that's trying to figure that out and trying to see how I can contribute to that. Of course, that's the, I think, most targeted form of listening when you're trying to really achieve something. But I find that that's not happening a lot nowadays for me. I don't know why. It's not like a conscious, I want to sit here and unless I really want to learn like a song, a patandaram, or if I'm trying to compare that. But a lot of the times it just happens when I'm listening. This conscious taking will happen when I'm just listening to a song or to a full concert.
So do you call it conscious taking, or do you call it more subconscious taking in this context? How do you distinguish the two?
When it's passive, it's definitely subconscious. But when it's active, although I'm not listening to take something, there will be at some point something will happen. And then at that point, it becomes conscious because I am actually working with an idea I heard. And I'm like, oh, I love this idea. Let's see what I can do. I didn't plan on that being what I was going to work on, but ends up happening, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I found that one instance of sort of deliberate but still passive listening that I've tried to use on occasion is if I'm trying to learn a patandaram or something, then I'll use YouTube Loop or one of these various things to like just take one sangati and even if I'm working and I'm coding or something, I'll just have it on, loop, and then by the end of the morning, hopefully I will have absorbed at least the contours of that sangati. I'll have to obviously give attention to it afterwards, but it's kind of maybe it's not quite kosher, but like I found it useful anyway.
That's another thing. I think you can like slow down on YouTube.
Yeah.
And I've never done it because I always think it's
We're
wrong.
in two minds about it.
I've never done it because I feel like it's just wrong because, what if you didn't have that option?
But then again, I would argue that with
You do.
Yeah, but I don't know. I just feel like
you should use the tools of this century.
It's sort of for instrumentalists to kind of, for vocalists too, but I think many times for an instrumentalist, the hardest thing is translating these sangatis onto the instrument. So if you're able to really listen to the nuances and slow it down, that's what you do when you practice anyways. You're slowing it down and
yeah.
So I don't think there's harm in listening to it slower, as long as you don't think that that's the sangati. Like, obviously, the kala pramanam of the sangati can't be compromised, but...
Yeah, I used to do this when I was learning, like, even rock guitar and stuff. Like, you'd have, a thing, you'd slow it down to half speed, and then, it really helps with figuring out what some of this stuff is doing. And, if you had a guru in front of you, presumably they would have also broken it down for you, right?
Same, yeah.
But I feel like it's just, for me, it's like cheating, and it's like, I want to train myself to be able to pick up without having to slow down.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like it's just a training process, and I want to be able to do that, but
that would be the end goal, but I think I'm
yeah.
not quite there yet, so I have to use the tools to slow it down.
I think one thing maybe is that if you do it initially, it helps you realize when you're hearing it fast, what that translates to slowly. So it can give you the key to pick up even the fast things.
No, I agree. What about you?
think
you guys listen?
Oh, go on.
No, I was asking.
Okay. No, I was going to say listening's an interesting one, because we're now listening in a way that we've never listened before. So it's a similar thing to somebody's point in that we have a tool or a function to slow something down and listen and modify it in the way we listen to it. Before, supposing you were born 40 years ago, you would hear like that artist sing maybe like once or twice, or whenever they came to your town or district, you hear it. And then I think, I can't remember who was talking, whether this was Escalianaman sir or KVN. So somebody was talking about, when cassettes and stuff were coming out, for the life of it, I can't remember who it was, but it's back 50, 60 years ago, you heard that once and you kind of get inspired, and that the essence of that music is left in your head. When obviously you're not gonna be able to absorb a huge, like, great deal of detail from it, but you have the essence of it and you'll get inspired by it, and then you hear the artist again, or you like make time to try and travel to hear the artist. Whereas now we have the option of saying, okay, I love this Ramaikana, Ramana Krishna, I'm going to play it like 500 times, which I'm guilty, like, so many of those things. So you hear things again and again, and then the things that go on subconsciously are very different to the processes that would have happened if you just heard the artist once.
Yeah.
Be it even if that's like mimicry when you don't want it to be, or attempted mimicry even when you don't want it to be that way. And I think that's how, at least when I was growing up, the initial listening, like because I started learning formally quite fairly late, but the initial like listening was all just passive, listening to the same old MLV recordings again and again and again and again. And then you get to 17, 18, and someone turns around and says, "Oh, you sing well, but you sound like you're trying to sing like a woman." And I was just like, "No, I'm not. I'm really not." And then you kind of go back and you see the random things you picked up, and it's the things that, those nuances, and that's just a function of hearing these recordings again and again. So I think something I've tried to curb probably in my own listening is this almost addiction to like playing the same old thing, not the same old things, but to like repeat something again and again, or at least the same thing, because it really kind of affects the way I think, and then I'm able to like interpret that music myself when I come to it. But yeah.
And one thing quickly to kind of go off of that is that, we do get influenced by so many different artists, and as a violinist, when we accompany so many different artists, invariably we've listened to 50 versions of Kaddanuvariki, so many versions, and you're giving more accompaniment than solos usually, right? So when that's happening, which Kaddanuvariki are you really going to be solidified with? How are you going to actually solidify your patandaram when you are playing for so many people? So I don't know about other violinists, but I've definitely, at some point I'll be like, okay, there's too many sangatis being jumbled in my head. Not even sangatis, even nuances of small gamakams, which are still part of your patantaram. It's not enough to just get the sangati right. You have to be able to do it in a certain, how are you going to teach it? You can't teach 6 different versions. When I was, you take Kanyamma or any of, my guru or other gurus, she has so many students. Ask anyone to play Sogasuchuda Tarama. Like that same exact patantaram will be there. Usually the second or third song that she teaches to every student. Same exact patantaram, and most of the times the mistakes happen in the same place too for all the students. Like we know exactly, I'll get random texts from random students being like, do you have the patantaram for this? Because we can trust that. Or you listen to Shemangudi, he had so many students, but this is the Shemangudi patantaram. It comes from that too, but as a violinist, it's easy to get that jumbled up in your head. And I think that goes with listening too, because we're not only listening when we're actually listening, but we're listening when we're performing. And that is something that I think, unless you kind of keep it separate, it's something that can mess with you.
It's one of... Go on, sorry.
Just wondering, how do you advise your own students, who we have here as well, on this particular issue of like, padantaram confusion and the difference between being a accompanist and playing your own solo version of a composition?
I think one of you guys can take that one.
You can be brutally honest.
Yeah.
Even though he's just down there. So.
Well, I think Kamalakiran, for me, he helps me a lot with accompaniment. So with the actual padantaram, Subhash uncle, his father, who I learned from, he says that I can listen to a lot of different people and try to put their sangatis where they fit into the padantaram structure that he's taught. But to not get it confused, I think it kind of comes on stage, like you kind of just have to try to follow whatever the singer is doing. But when actually playing solos or playing the kriti for itself, it is a little hard for me, at least, to keep the padantaram straight. But notating songs and really playing them many times and listening to them many times does help me. So I think that's how I've gone about doing it.
Quick note also, when Appa says that to his students, and we all do this when we'll listen to like an MLV or MDR and we'll be like, oh, that sangati is amazing, let's keep it. It's assuming that at that point the student has the knowledge to know what's a good sangati and what's the bad sangati. Then if they come back with a sangati that we don't like, we'll absolutely say don't keep that in. And
How subjective do you think that decision is? Because I mean, how subjective do you think that decision is? Because people have different ideas of.
So ultimately, I have the veto power, right? I'm gonna listen to it in class in the end, or my appa has the veto power, so they'll listen to this and they'll be like, "Nope, don't add this." It's very, and I think we do this to ourselves, where we should be very cautious about what we're adding to. And there's so many schools of thought. Some people say you can, at some point add, and there's other people who are like, nope, swear by the patantaram, don't change anything at all. I'm somewhere in between where I believe that if you're going to sing Orangasai, Shemanguri basically set that song. There is not many other. Before that, I think there was a version by Musri, which was quite different, but later on, Shemanguri's became the only version that you'll hear. As a violinist, it's the easiest song to accompany, or even as a mridangist, because you know what sangati comes after what sangati. So at that point, if someone adds a sangati, you never lose sight of what the patantaram is. If you're adding a gamakam or you're adding a nuance, you know that it's an addition.
It's
you never
the framework.
It's actual patantaram.
Yeah.
That's when a patantaram has been solidified. Because then no matter what people sing, you know that, okay, So I always tell Bhargav, and Sasanka is notorious for this, I tell them, like, if you're going to add your own sangatis, which it's completely okay to, I'm very honest, I'm not going to hold back. I'm notorious for this, where I randomly add sangatis where I don't know where it comes from as a violinist. So if we're going to do that, I think it's important that anyone looking there can know that it's an addition, anyone in the audience, and yourself. If it's not inherited as your patantaram, but rather something that was spur of the moment that you added, that works. Another beautiful thing that I've heard from a friend, Gokul Chandramouli, he's Neveli sir's nephew. So he always says this. He'll say, you're singing for like so many years. Obviously, when you are singing, you'll get some ideas. Sing through it, practice it, table it. Don't play it on stage, just table it. Sing it again, perform it. 3 years later, if that idea keeps on coming back, then clearly that it's an idea that should be included.
Yeah.
Because
I like that too.
But if it's just something that happened in the moment there when you're practicing, and then next time you completely forgot, then that sangati probably didn't have much value if it's not coming that many times. As a patantaram, I'm not saying it doesn't have value as a musical instance, because that happens on stage. Sometimes we're singing, we're performing, and we get something that's a musical instance that inspires us. Absolutely play it. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, because you're not changing the patantaram at that point. You're just in your inspiration. But then I can't go tomorrow and teach that to my student and say, and many times they'll be like, oh, you sang this, and I'm like, yeah, I did, but please don't play it, because that was something in the spur of the moment. So yeah.
So that was an interesting example you gave. What was this? What's the situation for something like an Orangashai before it had that kind of seminal setting by Shemanguri Mama? Like, what would have been the situation of how people would have approached that? I mean, do we have like the historical recordings to kind of understand that?
So there's a famous Musri recording that you can sing through, but all those sangatis coming after aren't there. I haven't heard it fully, so I mean, I've heard it fully, but it's been a while, so I can't off the top of my head sing the patantaram. But I mean, at some point we know that all these sangatis are set by somebody. We don't ever know if it's really set by the composer. So it could have been set by the composer, it could have set by musicians. The composition always is evolving. It's completely ignorant, in my opinion, to think that today we're following a patantaram that the composer himself has set. I mean, that's not possible. So really, we're carrying on traditions which we think is good music at the end of the day. And when we are making additions to the patantaram or changing out the patantaram, because it's our view of good music has changed as it evolves. We're saying, okay, I mean, this is good for this song, but this might be better for this song. So ultimately, we're the judge in the long run. Right now, our guru is the judge. But at some point, when even our guru, when they made the change, they were the judge of making that change at that time.
Yeah.
Right? So I think when you're objectively, at some point, you know when you're ready to kind of consciously allow yourself to do that. The problem is when you're doing that before you're ready, which is what happens, and then there's a jumble of patandaram, and you can't, if I ask you to teach or sing it exactly the same way, you won't be able to do it. That's when it becomes a problem.
It's interesting what you said about it's, you know, we're really, what we think we're preserving as tradition is actually what we think of as good music now. And I wonder how, you know, that's obviously changed from, say, our parents' generation to our generation to now your students' generation. Like, what do you think are the forces that have changed what we think of as good music? Like, I wonder what, that's probably different for everyone here, right? Like,
I'll let anyone else, yeah, someone else can take that. I mean, how about for you, since you asked the question, like, what,
oh, yeah.
how do you look at it?
I don't know. I mean, I guess it's, see, I came to Carnatic music quite late in a formal sense because I learned Western, like classical, then like popular music, and then kind of formally started quite late. So my kind of, the kind of music that I was into before was stuff that eschewed a lot of like technical virtuosity for the sake of it. So, like I know that a lot of people who are into Carnatic music also love, like, you know, metal because it's got like really difficult guitar and stuff, and I'm like, that wasn't the stuff that I came into music in general from a kind of very much a kind of like, what's an attractively crafted song, what's a kind of well crafted solo, what's a well crafted melody, you know, that kind of thing. So I think that I probably came into it thinking that something about feel was very important in a very general sense. I don't know, how does that differ for?
I actually completely agree. I think at some point, again, I was talking with Gokulana about this, and I mean, I talk to Appa about this all the time. At some point, there's something that transcends grammar, that transcends what's okay, what's not okay. In the end, if you're really talking about the feel of music, there, and this is a tall take, but I don't think there's anything wrong. There's no such thing. You might not like it, but does it have to be my problem that you don't like it? I don't know. Like, at some point, there are different sangatis. I mean, we always like to listen to some old artists, and we'll be like, oh, he sang this nishadam there, that nishadam is not there in this ragam. Like, it's, we'll always make some claim like this, and 90% of the time we don't know this history of the claim that we're making, because you'll go back to documents or you'll go back to padams and you'll realize, no, it's actually there and something changed along the line. But even if it weren't there, is it the end of the world? If it's coming from a genuine place of feel? I don't think it is.
Yeah, I think Bhargav had a point.
So so usually, like, sometimes before concerts, KK Kamalakiran usually just tells me, like, play with like feeling, or like just show that you're actually feeling. And then I'll finish the concert, and then KK will call me and he'll say, oh, okay, I may not have done this, but I saw that you felt it and it was actually genuine. So that with that feeling, like, even though I may not have done that, it sounded good when you played it because you actually felt it. So I also agree with that.
Oh, fascinating. Yeah. That's very interesting to hear the kind of Guru-shishya interaction post a concert. That must be very special. Yeah. Any other views on that?
I mean, I guess the conclusion is, if you become one with music, any kind of rules just kind of step back. Yeah.
So at that point, that is really what you think good music is.
Yeah.
Right? What is really good music to you isn't what everyone defines as good music to you.
Yeah.
But that's also because we are performing and we are preserving a tradition, which is important. I don't think we should take away the importance by just saying whatever you feel is right. I mean, music has been a certain way, which is why I say table it. If you get a cool idea for a sangati, table it and go through. If you're really feeling it, if it's going to become your style, if it's going to become something, it's not going to be deliberate. It's going to keep on coming back, and I think it'll slowly, as you mature, it'll sink in, and these changes happen very naturally, and I think that's when it's very beautiful. I don't think it should be something like, oh, I learned this patandaram, let me change this aspect because he's saying it.
Consciously. Yeah.
Because someone's saying it. I don't think that's necessarily the right way to do it. But that's just my take. I don't think it doesn't have to be the right take.
Yeah, it's clear that obviously everyone here has a value for tradition and preserving, the Carnatic tradition. But what is probably quite different about this group of people here is that, once upon a time, all the people who were in the Carnatic music world would have probably been from a particular, background, or, like a cultural background or cultural exposure. Whereas now already we're talking like, there's a bunch of us in the UK and there's a bunch of you in the US, right? Their influence is going to be different there.
Yeah.
And, different socioeconomic, backgrounds, different kind of cultural backgrounds in other respects. Like, how is this, I wonder how this has, affected, the diversity of what we think is good music, and like, the way that music has developed now. Is it somehow reflecting these different places that each one is coming from? Or is it still quite kind of the same? I don't know.
Repeat that last part again.
Is it, because we're all from much more diverse circumstances, well, we think, than perhaps once upon a time, how is that reflected in the music that we see from different places, and because of the international nature of where we all are, and we might be listening to all kinds of other things and whatever, like, do you feel any of that, those other external influences that wouldn't have existed before, creeping into how you approach music?
Oh, absolutely. So I actually minor in ethnomusicology, which is basically learning music. I mean, I don't want to go through like the academic version of it, but for the easy way to understand it is just different music, different musical styles. And before I did ethnomusicology, I did not allow myself to listen to anything else but Carnatic music. I don't know why that was the case, because at some level, I think we've all realized that, if we listen to Carnatic music, or if we listen to other music, or if we perform other music, then it'll dilute our Carnatic music. As first of all, I don't understand that argument of why it would dilute it, because so I think, or vice versa, and the vice versa does happen to me. I cannot play a Bollywood song because I will inevitably play very heavy gamakams, which just won't work. And I'm like, what are you doing? I've gotten better since, and I've realized that I actually sat down and worked on Bollywood songs, because it actually helped me play ragams like Kapi and Sindhu Bhairavi better than I would have otherwise, because as much as there's a Carnatic version of these things, I do believe taking those liberties in Kapi and Sindhu Bhairavi, for me, and I enjoy doing that. And I've realized that the lighter ragams sound better for me now. And yeah. I don't think that that's anything wrong with doing that. As long as I don't play Kamboji the same way, I think it goes to how grounded you are in what you're doing, It's like different languages. You're not gonna, just because you learn Spanish doesn't mean you're gonna speak English the wrong way,
Yeah.
If you know English well. So
that's a good analogy, yeah.
Maybe that's a bad analogy, but that's just how I think about it. I think if you can keep it separate and you're able to be grounded, then all the things that seep through are going to be within the bounds of what you're doing. I think that can always be complementary.
Also speaking on, I'm sorry.
No.
Okay.
Speaking on a technical level, I also learn Western violin. So learning Western violin actually helps solidify like technique in Indian violin as well. And I think that learning Western violin has really helped with control over the bow and over fingering technique, but also listening to Western music and other types of music kind of helps solidify what your enjoyment of music is. So I'm slowly trying to start to enjoy Carnatic music, my Carnatic music, like whatever I play more, so that there's more emotion in my playing based on whatever I like in other types of music, if that makes sense. Like really understanding what enjoyment is of your own music, I think might help with flow, which is something that I'm trying to work on. So yeah, but learning Western violin technically, I think it does help.
Interesting. And I guess like what with the violin being a kind of at one point in history being an imported instrument, like there's obviously going to be valuable things of insight from the Western tradition that can help, I guess. That's very interesting that you mentioned like the enjoyment aspect of Carnatic music is something that you found was influenced by your experience listening to other music. Is that a fair?
Yeah, like I've definitely grown up listening to just Carnatic music, but like Kamalakiran said, branching off and listening to other types of music, which is something that I've done only recently. I think it helps a little bit with flow and emotion as well.
Yeah, interesting. Does anyone grow up with the perception that Carnatic music was somewhat emotion was to be avoided, like initially? I mean, we all know that's not the case, like because we all supremely enjoy it, but like for its emotional content. But like, did anyone get that feeling at any point, like of the kind of sanitized version of Carnatic music?
Well, I think if anything, it's the opposite, really. Because I always think of Carnatic music as something related or to do with Bhakti and devotion, which is very much to do with feeling. Because I always talk about this point, but why is music so filled with devotion and Bhakti? It's all to do with the feeling and how you feel about the music that you're presenting. So I think that's really interesting that you thought it was the other way around.
Well, I don't think it was so much. I felt it was like that. It was more the settings that you would often see it in were kind of, it was a disciplined thing, and you know, it was a kind of rigid thing, and you know, it was more about accuracy, you know, some would say. And I guess there's been a change in Carnatic music as well, from, you know, like the kind of the reduction in, you know, the compositions that have perhaps fallen out of the repertoire, that were more kind of, you know, Shringara laden, or kind of like these kind of feeling laden kind of, you know, padams, all these kind of compositions that maybe you know, we didn't hear for a long time as much. I guess that was where and you know, maybe just the traditional aspect of it's in a very traditional setting that's not you know, you don't often listen to Carnatic music in the same way that you go and listen to a concert, like a rock concert, or a, you know, go out dancing, right? It's not the same feeling, but it's fundamentally about feeling still, right? So I'm just interested to see what people's like initial you know, impressions of Carnatic music were in that sense.
No, I would agree. I think I'm definitely lying if I said during my earlier years I was singing with Bhakti. It's because obviously you are right. Because
it comes with maturity.
It comes with maturity.
Yeah.
It also comes with just learning the meaning of the songs.
Yeah, especially because we started off learning Pannise. So that was, you know, Tiruppugai Devaram.
Yeah.
That was our kind of introduction to Carnatic music. So yeah.
Yeah, so that was very much temple driven, obviously. That's where we started our musical journey. But then in terms of Carnatic music, like, I think the emotions come with, I think, knowing the music. And like you said, Sahana, being able to differentiate what you like from Carnatic music, and also the meaning and the context of the song. I think that definitely. So when you learn about why a composer has composed that song, what was the history behind the composition, that all definitely makes a difference. And that I've only started to appreciate recently.
So let me ask a follow-up on that for everyone here. What happens during Kalpana Swarams? Where are you feeling? I mean, are you feeling? Because based on I completely agree with you, by the way. Meaning is important. I learned the meaning when I'm playing, and many people will ask me, are you thinking about Rama when you're playing this song? Actually, sometimes I am. It's not a conscious happening. I don't know if Rama is like really holding a bow, an arrow, but that aha moment that I'm feeling, I can't disassociate it from Rama, because that is the context in which I'm feeling the aha moment, right?
Yeah.
So how can I say what gave me the aha moment at that point? Is it the ragam? Is it the talam? Is it the sahityam? Is it the meaning?
Yeah.
Is it or is it really all of it coming together? You can't really pinpoint it. You can't say this is the aha moment for any of it. So when we're talking about, what Carnatic music is and that Bhakti, that aha moment, for that same aha moment I felt for Kalpana Swarams. At that specific moment when I'm doing Kalpana Swarams, I might not be I'm thinking about, is the Kanaku coming to Talam or not, right? But where's the aha moment there? There's an aha moment there. So I think at some level that inherent Bhakti comes with that feeling, that aha moment that you get. And I think it can be associated to all those things that I've stated. I think many times it is. Many times I am appalled, not appalled, but I love, like, my favorite example to use is Balaka Nakamaya, where that Anupallavi, the whole time Tyagaraja is talking about how, he has all these, like, jewels, and he's tall, and he has, all, like, praises of Rama. And the way Atana is shaped during that, when he comes back to why don't you come and protect me? The Atana from it's a very different Atana. And so when I'm saying aha at that moment, I'm saying how Atana has changed, how it's changed, or how the feeling has changed, in addition, in combination to the lyrics, and how it fits into the talam. So I can't really pinpoint what it is that I'm saying aha to. And I think going to the sanitized version of Carnatic music, what he was talking about, it gets very sanitized because we're taught these aha moments.
You're taught where to experience them almost.
Yes.
When we're taught to experience these, many times you won't sing with feel until it happens yourself. You're supposed to be feeling something.
You're like, why am I not feeling it? Sometimes.
What am I feeling? Because how many people are going to understand that the yearning that Tyagaraja had for Rama? Even if you understand that, what if you don't have that yearning for Rama? We're all singing, Nidhi Chala Sukama or Ramuni Sannidhi. Is money important, or is Rama Sannidhi important? But we're all choosing money over Rama Sannidhi. Let's be honest. Like, all of us here, how many people are really sitting there singing for Rama? We're all choosing money. So, like, at which point do we take all of this and then translate it into our own form of bhakti, right? At some point, we have to understand what Tyagaraja was yearning, how he was feeling. We have to understand that. We have to put ourselves in his shoes. But really, to feel it true to ourselves, we have to kind of translate that to what it is for us as well. And I think it's that congruence or that assimilation of all these different aspects, which, if it's just sanitized and said this is what it is, you can understand in theory as much as you want. But really, when you feel the aha moment, and then you start to think, why did I say aha? At one time, I thought it was just the ragam that made me say aha. I was like, there's absolutely nothing else. I don't, when I'm 13 and 14, I'm really not thinking about really what's happening. But then at some point, I'm like, but the ragam is only shaped by what's happening in that context. Right? That context is adding the ragam, giving the ragam that feeling. So I think for me, really, that sanitized version did not work, because it was very much, this is what it's supposed to be. But it can be what it is to you at that point. And I think eventually even that changes. At some point it'll be, what is Bhakti? Even that changes. And I can say that currently where I'm at, I do think about all the aspects and they all come together, but I'm not sure how many people are in that same space. And I think that's completely okay, whatever that space is. I might not be in that space, next year. I don't know what I'll be thinking about.
It's also delivery.
No, Martha, you go, sorry.
No, I was going to say, it's also delivery. When you're younger, even if you're not able to visualize Rama in front of you, being able to understand and appreciate the artists, though perhaps the artists themselves can actually imagine or visualize Rama in front of them, and for you to actually see them, appreciate that in itself gives you the feeling. And then initially that's what you see, and although it might be something that you're taught, but then I think over time, like you said, with maturity, it comes naturally to you as well. Yeah.
And also there's another aspect that is like the the form. I guess we're taught the very specific context, the religious context of you know, Rama who looks like this with a bow and everything. But I guess the form that is created from the tapestry of the sahityam and the raga, right? As you said, Kamalakiran, it's the context of Tyagaraja's Bhakti, sure, but it's also the reason you're experiencing this wonderment is because this swarupa, this creation of the sahitya woven in with that raga is just you can't see it, but you can feel its beauty, right?
Mm.
And, you know, even if you're not even religious or whatever, you can feel bhakti towards that beauty, right? And it
It happens during the manodharmam aspects.
Yeah,
you know? Because, I mean, sure, you might be thinking about it within the context of the song. Like with Neraval, obviously you're thinking about it with the context of the song. But if you're doing a, you know, RTP or something that's purely mathematical, let's say we're doing like a full Kanaki, like Korapa segment, you're not thinking about Rama at that point. There's no Rama there. But that aha moment can be likened to the same aha moment that you had when singing about Rama. That same thing. There's that same wonderment when I sing Kanaka. I refuse to believe singing too much Kanaka is less bhavam. That's only for the audience. If you really genuinely are feeling the Kanaka that you're singing and that you're really finding that joy in it, in the end, like, I can't say that's less bhavam. Can't be less bhavam, because maybe that is really what's, you might find that aha for mathematics. Like, who's going to say no to that? Like, at some point, we have to be very careful about the judgments that we make about what is good music and what is bad music. And the sanitized version of, okay, like, let's just sing, this is it, this is the only thing. You know, that same aha moment that I feel for Carnatic music, you might not even get it when you listen to Carnatic music. Like, I jokingly ask Appa, what if I hated Carnatic music? Like, what if I didn't feel it? What if I only felt this aha moment for something else? What would you have done, right? Like, that, I think that aha moment is really what makes Carnatic music. You can learn to get it, you might want it, but at some point, if you don't want that aha moment there is something that's wrong in that form. And I'm not wrong in that form, not like as a definition, but for you. For me, I might not be able to, and I think it's important to be okay with that. I'll be the first to say that I don't feel it for Ranjani. I have not ever felt it for Ranjani. And maybe that will change on someday. I have heard Ranjani, I have appreciated it. I have been like, this is a beautiful ragam. But I have never been in it when I have played it.
I mean, that's like me and Arberi. Honestly, same. Arberi, yeah.
I think that's okay. I really think it's okay.
Got some shocking confessions on this call here.
Okay.
I think Sasanka wanted to say something.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, like, when we get that aha moment, especially in Swarams, when you don't really have that Sahitya Bhavam as much as in a Kriti or Nerval, what you have is like a self-satisfaction. Okay, my Kanaka came to Talam. Yes, finally. And like up until then, you're kind of on the edge of a cliff waiting for it to happen. Okay, will it happen? Will it not? You kind of know that it will happen because you took it at the right place. It's been going well so far, but you still have that small level of suspense. And when it finally comes to Talam, it's kind of a relief, a happiness that you finally got it. And of course, if it's a good pattern, if it's a nice pattern in your eyes, then you'll definitely enjoy it. And you don't necessarily have to know the mathematics to enjoy it, even as a listener, or even just like as an accompanist, or just the main artist. You just need to feel like the layam, and enjoying that is basically what Kanaka is. The mathematics is a higher level to that, but on a base level, Kanaka is just a rhythm pattern, just like, I don't know, in Mridangam, Takadimi Takajam. You don't need to have like some giant chord weight to make it sound good.
Yeah, and it's about, like you said, the enjoyment. That's really important, isn't it? That, like, if you can show that when you perform it. Absolutely. Adesh, you had a question ages ago, didn't you? Sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm just following on from what you're saying. It's interesting because I guess that if you say the outcome, what we've been discussing now is that the term enjoyment is sort of constantly evolving, not, for each individual themselves. So like at some stage, what you enjoy in terms of your Kalpanaswaram or what you want to get out of it is completely different to even the next day. So one day you might feel that everything clicks together, and it's that aha moment, as Kamalakiran said, for the the ragam, the sahityam, the kalapram, everything coming together. And another day it might simply be like the memory of someone singing that song in such a beautiful way, and you just channeling that energy through it. So I think on a each time you open your mouth or you pick up your instrument and do something, the enjoyment you get is definitely, it's in a different shade. But I think that's the beauty of it, because it's like, they say imagination's like a man's best friend, but it can be a man's worst enemy as well. But if you take the best friend side of things, I feel like the enjoyment is just a product of our life, is a product of our imagination, right? Our happiness through life, like how we perceive everything to be. So in a similar sort of light in terms of our music, it's like however you perceive it to be on that day. And this is an interesting part. I wonder if like someone wants to discuss what their views are on it. But Ranjan, you mentioned it. So it's one thing us feeling the satisfaction, and I guess that's the key bit, right? We get that self-satisfaction and that aha moment, or that that in fulfillment from it. But then what you feel fulfilled by may not be what the people who are listening to your music feels fulfilled by. So I guess, and as all of you guys are like performing or giving concerts and stuff, and performed extensively, so it's a case of sometimes you might play something or sing something that you don't particularly say that was great, but then like maybe like 150 people or 1,500 people or even more say, oh my god, like that just moved me to tears. But it's interesting, how does one even find that balance of like, it's not even a case of targeting something in a way for someone else to enjoy. It's like I'm not very
no, I understand
I like
I understand your question, and I think one thing to understand is that we're all singing for audience. Let's not forget that. We're all giving performances. We're all performing for audiences, and that is not going to change. And the more of a beginner, not wrong word, but the more you start to just perform, you're not at that stage. I mean, I don't know if if Bhargav, Sahana, and Sasanka will come up to me with lists where he'll end with like, he'll be like, I want to do Venkatashela Vihara, I want to do Kanakashela Vihara, I want to do and those are all the songs that he feels, and I'm like, that's beautiful. Please practice that way, but don't perform that list, because that's not something that I would say that right now is okay to perform, just because we are, in the end, Carnatic music is something that you are performing. It's not by definition, but if you are performing, you have to cater to that at that moment. You do have to find a way to include what everyone is, enjoying, until you can get to a point where you're like, okay, now what I enjoy is what everyone will enjoy. Yeah. When is that point? Definitely not when it'll happen. It'll just happen, And there are things that I do today that I haven't done 2 years ago. There are things that I'm doing today that I probably won't do in 2 years. This whole notion of having a prati madhyamam in every concert, which is very important, I feel, which recently I've not been very good at for the last 2 years, because I personally don't feel like when I'm doing it, many times it's a checklist item. Yeah. Did I have a prati madhyamam in there? Let me just put in a prati madhyamam. I'm not happy with it being a checklist item. So
guilty.
Interesting, because a lot of what a lot of it was saying is if we compare, say, with Hindustani music, where you often get a single raga or a couple of ragas delineated in great detail extensively, right? And this concept of, we've got to present a menu of what a thali madri, you've got to have a little bit of this dish and this dish and whatever, they don't really seem to have that same approach, right? And it almost seems like what you're saying is that you've kind of moved away from the idea of, I've got to give everyone a kind of like thing that a platter.
Yeah, and this might be a very like arrogant and egotistical thing, I'm not sure, but the only person who proclaimed that I'm allowed to do that right now is myself, right? No one has told me, oh, this is the time where you can, all I know is that if I do something that someone doesn't like, there are people who I take things from and people who I don't take things from. If someone just comes up to me and says, do this, I don't know if I have to take that. I don't, it really depends. If my guru calls and says, do this, that's a different thing. But so far she has not had a problem with anything that I've done so far. So maybe that's the only thing that's making me sane, saying, okay, I can make my own decisions, like with what I want to perform and what I don't want to perform. There are times where she'll be like, really? And I'll be like, yeah. And she'll be like, okay. If you think so. She might not like it. And I think that's the great thing about my guru is that she might not like it, but if it comes from a place of genuine, I wanted to do it, she'll just be like, okay, that's what you wanted to do. And I think there's a point though. 4 years ago, or 5 years ago when I was performing, I did not have that same place where I could say, I'm just going to do whatever I feel. So at that point, for students, what is feeling, I think it does stay at home, unfortunately. At least the way that Carnatic music is, I don't know if that's right or wrong, but because there is this expectation to present a menu, and there is this expectation to do these things, if you want to be a performer, you have to, for sometimes you have to do that.
Yep.
And there is a way that you can feel that too. You can feel the happiness in that Pratima in a different color, but at some point, today I don't. Sometimes the Pratimadima will naturally come. Sometimes I'll have only Tyagaraja Kirtanas in the list. Sometimes I'll have, first of all, I barely give solos anyways as a violinist because that's something that unfortunately is not very normalized. So when I'm giving those solos, do I really want to, again, in those few times that I'm giving a solo, do I want to follow all these things or do I want to do what I like doing? And I think in the end, it's what comes in the moment for me at this point. And I think that's okay because I do know that I'm not going to do anything that is against Carnatic music.
So very interesting. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that it's an interesting point you made about feeling like the obligation to present like an assortment of things. But then I would also say that each one just has to play to their strength as well, right? Because if some people, their strength might be repertoire, right? They might just know like hundreds upon hundreds of songs, in which case that assortment becomes like such a rich thing and part of the, not an expectation of the audience, but part of what they can deliver and give to audiences. Whereas, somebody else might just have this amazing sonorous voice that can really like hit the Tarastai notes with like ease, and they might just want to show off a Thodi RTP for like two hour, an hour ragam and just and crack on from there, the long tanam as well. So I guess each one just has to play to their own strength. But then I also, as Kamalakiran was saying, the more one performs and has that experience, the more you kind of refine how you go about presenting these things and how probably, I'm sure what you've said, the less you sort of bother with some of these perceived restrictions of what you want to put out. But I would say for like, at least from my side, from the UK, there were just relatively few opportunities growing up. I'm sure Matagi, Ranjan, some people also agree. So, I mean, that's an interesting point because you guys can shed light on what it's like growing up and having opportunities, regularly to even perform and refine the way you present things. Because, when I sang in India for the first time, I only started performing a few years ago, but when I was in India for the first time, I'd hardly given like 7-8 concerts before that, and it's so much different to at least having that thing where you're even if it's a chamber concert or like people coming home and like asking you to get your violin out or asking you to sing or practice, not even having that opportunity to refine those performance skills in front of other people and just sit with a mic and co-artists as well. I thought, I mean, as with anything, practice makes perfect, right? Or gets at least gives room for improvement. But what was it like then, growing up with lots of opportunities at least to like perform with other people?
I mean, especially now since we can record and listen to our performances, we have a much larger opportunity to refine them. Like if we make a mistake, we can prevent it from happening. If we feel like, oh, I accidentally cut off the accompanist, or I put wrong talam for the Tanya Vartanam, or I came in too soon or too late, something like that, then you can listen to your recording if you record it in some way, which is usually a good practice in my opinion. If you listen to the recording, you can make sure that doesn't happen again, at least not for something like that. You can make a new mistake, just don't repeat the new ones.
I agree with you, Sasanka, that it's a good idea to record, although I hate listening to my own recording. But it definitely that's probably the reason, because I could learn a lot from listening to them. But yeah, very interesting what Adesh touched upon of the difference in environments, because Kamalakiran, as you know, I spent a few years in DC, where obviously there's the environment where your kind of musical coming of age happened, and the kind of intense and amazingly rich environment that there is there for teachers and concert opportunities and all that. And whereas that like this also, I guess, touches on who you're playing for aspect. If you're playing in DC, you're basically could be playing for an audience like in Chennai or Bangalore or something, right? Essentially, is my feeling when I was there. Whereas for us, perhaps in London, there are some places that are like that, but in Cambridge, certainly, if I'm giving a Carnatic concert, it is for people who are largely not exposed to Carnatic music. How do you, what are people's thoughts about that aspect of, who, the environment that you find yourself in?
I would also say that because now it's so easy to get opportunities because everything is online and there's so many platforms, and you can perform whenever you think you're at that level. So is that a good thing? How do you know when you're at that level? And also I guess you should really be learning for art's sake and not be thinking, oh, I need to practice because I've got this performance. But at the same time, performing is a huge learning experience. So finding that balance, I think, is important. I think we should talk about that as well.
Ultimately, what the end goal should be is to share what you feel in that music with the audience. That's why I think, at least in my opinion, that's why performances are so popular. Because each artist has an individual feeling. They have an individual view on music, and to share that, being able to share that is a skill on its own. And once you share that, you can have a giant compilation of viewpoints. A viewpoint of artist A could be completely different from artist B, and whenever you want to listen to something, you can choose, do I want to listen to this kind of music or this kind of music? Do I want to listen to more kanakas, or do I want to listen to more slow alapanas, in copy or something?
Oh, you can choose after your guru says you can choose. No, but what I mean by that is that we all can only choose after they say, okay, you can listen to whoever you want. How much is that why can't you listen to everything else? I think that's because you don't know what you're gonna put in.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is this part of the perceive kind of what Ranjan was touching on earlier, part of that, say you're young and you're entering Carnatic music community, you have these is this what you meant by restrictions, even that being under someone, or the whole concept, which is central to Carnatic music, is having that guru who basically imparts that knowledge to you, and that comes with tradition and heritage in India in general, with rhythms and everything, but then having that, you have to kind of stick to what they're saying. So even if you fancy what the other guru and of another teacher, of another student, your friend, your best mate, is having a completely different experience, and their guru is saying, hey, go go on stage and perform every day at that stage, but your guru is saying no. It's almost there's parallel things, and you just have to, I wouldn't say you have to be content, because that sounds forced, doesn't it? It sounds contrived, but you have to kind of have that trust or that faith in your guru, and
you have to have that. You have to have that faith. I'll say two things on that. Here, I'm paying some $60 to learn from a Western violin teacher. If I feel that Western violin teacher isn't teaching me, I stop paying her and I can go to any other teacher. Because I'm the one paying for the lessons. If I'm not getting what I want from you, why am I obligated to continue with you? That is the mentality here. If we learn from a Western violin teacher, that's probably the mentality in the UK when you're learning Western violin. Where is there an obligation to trust the guru? Really? If you don't, you should. I do think that at some point, a lot of this comes from the ignorance of not really understanding where your guru is coming from, because a lot of the times the guru is coming from their own experience. What worked for them is what they're going to be teaching you, unless they're a bad guru, which also exists. Let's not act like bad gurus don't exist. When I mean bad gurus, I'm talking about in all forms of music. You know, it's so easy for us to say that we had a bad professor for this college in university.
Yeah.
We say it all the
So-
time. We struggle to say that
Mm.
for anything else.
Mm.
We have to normalize that too. There's good and bad in all of that. But that trust that you have in your guru will automatically form when you find that guru. And I think at that point, you have no problem saying.
Yeah.
And I do think there's a reason, there's an age for this, you know.
Yeah.
Sasanka doesn't necessarily have to trust me or not trust me. It's enough if his mom trusts me for now. You know what
I do, definitely.
I'm just saying, it's enough if his mom trusts me. But
I
at
think
some point it'll transfer over. Like when I was in 2006 to Kanyama, I was 9 years old. I had no concept of what I trusted and what I didn't trust. I trusted her because my parents trusted her.
Mm.
And I knew that she's an incredible guru. I knew I heard her music. I loved her music. So invariably, it automatically transferred over. And now, like, that trust is unbreakable.
Mm.
this is it's a point that we actually spoke about during the hangout with TM Krishna, with Ranjan, you might remember. But it's the concept of like what the difference between, as Kamalakiran, you said, bad professor. So like the difference between actually having a teacher and what we like regard as a guru. So like in our sort of tradition and culture, the guru is not a teacher. Like it's not just someone who just like says, I'm going to teach you this song. You come and learn Kavalambika and Todi today, and that's, you know, and go away and practice that. It's so much more than that. And that, I think it's for students, I guess something I feel that we might be missing a little bit more, and that could be brought back. But then there's other issues with this, you know, people viewing the whole situation thing of a guru in the traditional sense, is that relationship that people form with their gurus. It was very wholesome, like, and it is very wholesome for people who have the proper they're not proper, again, wrong word, but that traditional feel of that guru, because it's such a wholesome is the word I'd use, because it's not just somebody who teaches you the song. It's someone who is like an emotional support for you. It's someone who is like a you know, mental support, someone who's there. Yeah, exactly. And just throughout everything, you can lean on them, and but you know, that goes hand in hand with you having that trust to say, I will do what you tell me to do, and you know, in the way that you see fit. And I think that, how could I put it? Do you think that the number of guru type relationships in that sense is gone down, and it's everything's sort of seen in more of a teacher, like I'm going to someone to teach? I mean, how has it been? Because I've had like a very traditional guru type relationship with my teacher, but how's it been for you guys?
I think that for me, Kanyama, before anyone else goes, because I thought this and I'll forget this, the relationship that I have with my guru is priceless. And it is because, of course, you know, I have the utmost respect that I would close my eyes back and I would do absolutely anything she said without questioning it. There was no concept of question. Not that she didn't provide it, but I didn't have not everyone has this, by the way, because I think probably the way I was born and brought up, I was always brought up with that mentality that the guru is the guru. And I think a lot of us were brought up in that way, which is why when many people say, you know, there's someone who comes up to me, I mean, we find so many things, whether this is a good or bad, I'm not even touching on that, but it's tried and tested that this relationship with the guru has worked. There are also accounts of when it didn't work and when it's used as, I mean, their ego and power differences, that's always there. But let's not even touch on that for a second, and let's talk about all these gurukulams that have actually worked. I think today in the 21st century, we like to talk about the things that haven't worked, and I agree that we should talk about the things that haven't worked, but let's also realize that a lot of this has worked. And if it didn't work, I don't know if it's on the system or if it's on the individual. I don't like to blame a system for something that individuals take advantage of. I don't think that, I do realize that the system sometimes gives way for that, but it's not the individual's mistake at that point. I'll talk about Kanyama. When I went in 2006, it was very like, I wouldn't lift my head. I mean, I was very like, she never asked me not to do, she never said anything. She has not once said behave a certain way. It was just what came. But as it went on and on, to now, I find it to now where I have classes when I'm driving, because she will call. I mean, we don't. The last time I sat down for a class, I don't remember, but I do know that she had called me, and last week I was driving, and she said, I said this Pallavi, listen to the Pallavi, we'll listen to it, and then she had asked me, do you like it? Right now, if you think about gurus in that generation, like my guru, how many gurus are gonna ask, do you like it? And then invariably we will say, I mean, first of all, I did actually like it. Let's put that on there. I really did like it. But who's gonna say, you know, are we really gonna, if we didn't like it? First of all, we're not gonna think we don't. But there have been so many times when my guru has said, no, like actually tell me what or I'll say I like it, and she'll say, illa wanna kavlo pidikka. And I'll be like, what do you mean? And she's like, no, you're just saying it. I know when you're just saying it, and I know when you really feel it. And the fact that she said that one thing, or two, there will be times when my guru will say, we have had actually discussions about a sangati where, you know, is it good or not good, or what is good about this sangati? What do you think? And all of it comes from that underlying respect that I have for my guru, that underlying trust that I have for my guru, such that I think that, and the fact that that trust is somewhat, not somewhat, it is very much a two-way street with my guru. The fact that she allows these types of discussions to happen, and that she allows me to, you know, have my thoughts and to say this past a certain point where she feels that, you know, I can. Now she, you know, and there have been many times where, I mean, I think that's priceless for me, because every time I talk to her, it's like a lesson. And I would say one thing, that the fact that Bhargav, Sasanka, and Sahana, the fact that I am here, all of us are here, able to have this discussion, which all these would have been muted probably a long time ago. Who are we really, if we think about it in that, who are we to be talking about music and to talk about as if we have really come anywhere? You know what I mean? But I think the fact that it's okay to not be anywhere and still state your opinions, it's okay. I think that we mistakenly say that it's not there in the Guru-shishya relationship for many relationships, but from a personal experience, I can say it's definitely there with Kanyama, and it has been there with my guru. With my father, it's been there. He's my guru. I think I've heard stories of even like Shamunguri having these discussions with his students. So let's not take away that part of it too. I'm not saying that the bad parts don't exist in the system. The bad parts do exist in the system, and they have happened, and they will continue to, as long as we think about the guru in that way. That it does allow us to say, okay, anything goes, whatever they do, no matter what it is. That, as we know, can lead to so many other things. But the fact of the matter is, this is I think something that's been tried and tested, and something that we can all collectively say that once we form that trust, it's good. But I do think it's important to know when we're forming that trust and how we're forming that trust, and we're forming
one sort of
that's the difference between guidance and tutoring, right? Like in a guru who has that trust, the two-way trust, I mean, they wouldn't just tell you the answers. They'll make sure you understand it and know how to arrive to that answer in any other similar situation. Like when Kamalakiran, if I were to do something wrong and Kamalakiran were to tell me a correction, like, so I don't feel discouraged, he would immediately say something good, like, okay, you didn't do this good, but okay, you were okay at this, good job. But he will still remain firm on the thing that I have to correct. So, and the way that trust is shown and implemented is where I open-mindedly take that correction and work on it and show it to him in the correct way.
So here's where the power imbalance of a guru-shishya relationship happens. I'm here on this call, so they're so obligated to say all these things. I have yelled at all of them. I've yelled at Sasanka a lot. I've yelled at Bhargav a lot. I have another student, Sanjit, I've yelled at probably the most out of everyone. So I'm not gonna act like I don't take advantage of this power imbalance that's there. I definitely do.
I think it's really nice it's beautiful anecdotes with Kanyama and your relationship there as well. I think, I mean, from a personal standpoint as well, when I never even considered that there was anything wrong with the traditional guru-shishya relationship, because I also had like a fantastic relationship. So for the last, I joined Malama in 2009. I was 14 then. And from 2013 onwards to last year, every summer I'd stay with her for like 3.5 months. And we just live with her. And, her Shraddha Ka, who's also a singer there. And I guess it was like a very like, we'd have our like protected music time where there'd be class time or something, but really the whole day is class, right? Constantly. So when Mala auntie's cooking or Mala Mase, having lunch, there's always music going on. So it just became this, I think the word I'd use is just complete and utter like pure love. Like that's what it was. It was that pure, unfiltered relationship. And honestly, even she is literally, I have the same relationship I have with my mother as I do with her. And I think I'd even go further to say that it's like for me, it's like the most special relationship, the relationship you have with the guru, because it's like, it's so much more than just the art itself. And I think we need to allow ourselves and try and facilitate those relationships to happen. And it involves a little bit of let go as well, because we have to like get rid of that mentality that this is the provider of music and I'm the one going to learn the music. It's gotta be beyond that, and you've got to allow yourself to feel that,
Okay.
that love.
A little bit of devil's advocate here, because I like to just do that every now and then. So we had a little bit of a discussion about how a guru is different from a teacher, or a guru is Sahana, you talked about learning Western violin, for example. I suspect that obviously, whilst there are lots of tremendously positive things and things that are unique to the Indian classical system of learning, I suspect that sometimes we don't appreciate when these equivalent things exist in different spheres in other types of music or other cultures. So I'd be interested to hear people who've learned other kinds of genres or their experience of other genres. For example, Sahana, as you mentioned that you've done so, how does your experience of this level of this guidance versus teaching, these kinds of concepts of how you're learning? I mean, surely it's a bit simplistic to say that with Western music, people are just paying to get someone and they're in control and they can.
Oh, absolutely. I just said that in the very initial beginning.
Sure.
Like the very beginning, they have this thing. Literally, teachers will have a trial class to see if it's a good fit.
Yeah.
So like that's all I meant. But afterwards, both me and Sahana actually learned from the same Western violin teacher. I was the one who told her about. Our family told her about the same.
I see it. Yeah.
And we've had those same kind of conversations with. I don't know about Sahana, but I definitely have the same conversations that I with Diana. I think an important thing is that how we show the respect changes within culture.
Yeah.
I can say Diana. I can say I can be a little more informal, and I think that just changes because of the sphere that we're in. But I think barring that difference, I think that Guru-shishya relationship can be the same. I think very much so. And with her, it largely is.
Yeah, and also I feel the same way. Like Diana is very, very encouraging, and so is Subhash uncle. So I think they're just certain people who have that impact on your life. So like if we're contrasting a classroom setting from a violin class setting, there's obviously going to be a very big difference, because both Diana and Subhash uncle give me very like personalized advice, and they really try to challenge me. And I think that's what makes a good teacher or a guru. Instead of in a classroom setting, you might just get the same interaction with the teacher as the other 20 kids are. So I think I think gurus have in Indian music, we have like a special way of viewing our guru, because it's very personal, and it's more than just a class. It's more than just a class that we have once a week. We're just learning something. But I think it's safe to say for my Western violin teacher, she's also she has a personal connection to us.
I think, very safe. It's very similar with, I have not felt, I mean, other than I'm speaking to Kanyakumari Madam, which is like she is. There's something there, you know, with that kind of awe that comes with that name itself. When I went to
Yeah.
her, there was a certain awe when I said, "Oh my God, am I really gonna be learning from her?" Like
Mm.
that like starstruck, being starstruck by your guru. That some days I can't believe I'll have a conversation and I'll be like, I cannot believe I just spoke to her for like 45 minutes. To this day,
Yeah, seriously.
who am I to sit here and say any opinion? Sometimes I do think that many times I'm like, and the fact that I'm able to say something and I'm able, it's like crazy that that's happening, and that like being starstruck consistently every time I see that name. There's a certain like I really do feel starstruck when I see that in WhatsApp, uh, and I'm like, there's something that happens, and I that's just my personal experience, and that same feeling of being starstruck has happened when my Western violin teacher has also reached out to me, just because I respect her music. I've seen that, and I was like, even if the definition of a guru and how we act is slightly different, that kind of transfers over. And you know,
Yeah.
both she likes palak paneer a lot, so both Sahana's family and my family, we've taken palak paneer. I mean, it is more than a class, and Bhargav and I can definitely attest to this, in the sense that I mean, all of my students, I think it also happens to do with generation and age. You know, age gap is much less here, but outside of class, I think we're very good friends. I would like to say, with barring, you know, I think we have had late night calls where we don't talk about music and we're just sitting there talking about random stuff. You know, Bhargav has come over and stayed at my place, albeit maybe for a music thing, but you know, we have done much more than just sit down and play violin like the whole time. He's working on college applications, and you know, we sat through college applications together. Like, there is a bit more than just music being transferred between us. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, and that's something that's, I guess, in potentially with the current COVID situation, is something that we don't really have the same chance to do. I wonder how that's affected people. That kind of, you know, just spending time outside and absorbing someone's personality rather than just getting a musical transaction, as it were.
I mean, for us especially, I mean, it's always been kind of online, so that hasn't changed. In fact, it's been better because we have more time.
Yeah.
I still feel that our interaction with, you know, our gurus has never been restricted by the fact that it's online, because there's been so many incidents where I feel like my gurus know how I'm feeling without me telling them. Like, there's something special about it, and that has never like been restricted by the fact that it's just a phone call. I'm not sitting in front of them, but our gurus always know something more than you know, how much I tell them.
Yeah.
They sometimes know more than you know too.
Yeah.
You're right.
And then
yeah. No, so many instances. But yeah, so I would say COVID has actually.
I don't think it changes if you already have a relationship with your guru. Forming a new relationship will be difficult.
Yeah.
You can't deny that. The fact that having a new student without that face-to-face interaction, it will be much more difficult.
Yeah.
And
that's because a lot of our communities are very, you know, like prior to COVID, we depended on a lot of international travel. Like, if you're really serious on this, you would spend like a month or whatever in India, or you know, you would at least, you know, travel was an integral part of this learning, the ability to learn, if you like, or even be playing in concerts and things. But I guess that also brings a question of, you know, like, what if you don't have the facility? What if you don't have the ability to do that? Is it just always going to be a second-class experience if you, you know, maybe you don't have the money, for example, to go and travel every year to go and learn in person? How do we navigate this as Carnatic music becomes way more international than it ever probably thought it would be at any stage? You know, do we have to rethink how we have that richness of experience despite the distance?
I believe so. I think a lot of it has to go with rethinking, because what are we going to do right now? we can either just say it's not possible or we can make it possible.
Yeah.
And I'll say it many ways. Let's talk about just the way that music and seriousness of music is defined. Music, being serious about music and being a serious performer is defined by doing nothing else but music and, living in India and doing music full time. My best friend could be, I'm not saying there's no this is all generalized. So I'm not saying one, or there's no specific people I have in mind. I'm just saying that if X person is in India doing music full time, could be from India, could be from, if X person is there, and my neighbor, in my opinion, is a better musician in every way and knows, in my opinion, is better musician, is still considered a less serious performer and is maybe spends more time, is still considered a less serious performer than the person in India doing music full time. Why is that the case? Right? If we even go back further, people who did both education and music were not considered. There's an interview of Brindamma. I don't have it currently. Actually, I can pull it up. It'll take 2 seconds. Where Brindamma says, "Padichindu paadakudadu." She literally says, "Padikalam, sure, but you're never going to be as good as if you just do music. You have to put 100% into music." And then I think she goes on to say some examples of how you can't do both. And we do that when we go to med school. We're all med school. We're not, the amount of time that Adesh spent into med school is directly proportional with how well he did in med school, right? There's no, so
Yeah.
Talk about MSG and Lalgudi being MSG and Lalgudi. What did they do? They sat down and they only did music. Over time, now what happened? Everyone who does music full time now has something else that they've at least studied, even if they don't do it full time. And we have so many people who are doing both. Okay. Before Sandeep and Ram and Anand, actually all these people, before they went to India from US to do music full time, it was a foreign concept. Who thought that there would be musicians who were making it from there and still serious?
Yeah.
So I'm taking it a step further. Why can't there be serious musicians why can't I do everything I want to be? Be wherever I want and still be just as serious. Why can't the Guru-shishya relationship modify to the current terms? I think it can. I think it takes a lot of change in mentality. I think it takes a lot of change in the way we view what seriousness is and what the passing. One thing that can't be denied, though, is that personal relationships form in person much better than online. And that's not a Guru-shishya thing. You're going to be better friends with the guy you met in person than the guy you're meeting virtually. That's just the fact of the matter. But then again, look at all of us in so many different places. We are pretty much having a very unfiltered talk that we might not even have with some other people that we consider very close. So it's possible if we make it possible, I think.
Yeah, we're kind of forced to. Yeah.
You make a very, I know this is not exactly where Ranjan was going with this, but you made a very interesting point, Kamalakiran, in that there's this sort of pull in that. What it's interesting what you said, the analogy with what Vrindama was saying, right? So you have to just put all your eggs in one basket. But like you also said, the modern mindset is that everyone must have some sort of education, everyone must do that, and then everyone must sing or dance, and then everyone must also do somersaults, and everyone must also be a pilot, and
nothing is right or wrong. I'm not saying any mentality is right
exactly.
or wrong.
Yeah, exactly. So I think from my personal experience of going to med school, my friends or the guys at med school will attest that I literally didn't do, after my first or second year, I barely did any socializing. I'd come home and I just sit and I just sing and I just have class, and that would go on from 8 to until my neighbor started getting a bit, it wasn't really fair on her to be singing late into the night. So I guess what I felt personally was that, physically, right, whenever you do some sort of form of higher education or you're trying to juggle two things, there's always going to be a pull. Often they do, one does help the other in many cases. And I sort of derived a lot of inspiration from Pinakapani Garu, and, so much inspiration from him. And I always oh my gosh, someone did it, so I can do it. But I think ultimately I did find that it was hard. And I'm not saying that like, everyone's got things that they risk different responsibilities, but by trying to balance two things, I didn't feel like it was diluted, but felt I was being pulled between, because ultimately you have two different sets of responsibilities to different things. And I think what I've learned is to be realistic and rational about my expectations from it as well, because like I was saying before, I mean, it is how we perceive it to be, the situation and whatever we produce. And I think it's really good to definitely have a good like long-term goal and aim of where you want to go and how you want to do it, and work really hard as well. But I think by not being reasonable and rational about it, I think you can burn out really in either one of the two. So I think that's what one thing, I mean, for whoever's kind of watching this, I'd say from my side of things, like pace yourself, like with whatever you do. I mean, Pinakavani said died at 99, right? So he lived a good life. He was a bodybuilder as well. So he had that exactly, doctor, bodybuilder, teacher, performing art, musicologist. So he had lots of different things going on. But I mean, even when you look and read about it, it's like he paced himself so beautifully. Like he started teaching in his early 20s, like when he was a medical student. And then all throughout the whole time he was in Kurnool and stuff, his life was such a journey. You never saw like he hit everything and he was at the stage and he was there, and then he became a professor, and it was all like it happened in its own time. So I think that's probably what that's my kind of feeling in the last few years, because I, like Martingi knows and stuff, like I was literally out of action for singing for like 18 months, and I just about got through last season, and then this whole year I didn't sing until last week or the week before. So it was kind of really challenging. And one thing that Kamalakiran mentioned is, just someone mentioned, just being grateful for like, the fact that we have these teachers, the opportunities, because, we're just an autopilot, aren't we? We just learn the song, we practice, we perform, we enjoy. And then we're never prepared for like, oh my God, like what happens when you're stopped in your track? So I guess that kind of happened to me, where you're like, everything that you enjoy was taken away. And then you have to like reassess how you approach it, your attitudes towards it, and you can come back with a much healthy way. So I'd probably say like, just try and live in the moment and enjoy it. I know that sounds more like philosophical and like, kind of.
Right. And like Bhargav can attest to what you're saying. I'm speaking for him, but the biggest fight it's not a fight, but the biggest thing that I always have with Bhargav and Sanjit, not yet Sasanka and Sahana because they're a bit younger, but soon. But Bhargav and Sanjit is the fact that they will many times just say, okay, I'm doing college apps right now. Like, you're not even in college, okay? You're doing college apps and you are struggling finding time, which is, I completely understand you're struggling finding time. My point is that if you're struggling right now, double the workload. It's only going to get harder, right? It's not going to at any point, at least when you're in your early studies, it's not going to get easier. Maybe I do believe that once you start working, then fine, like, okay, you don't have to worry about the exam, but then you have work stress. Like everything is always, there's going to be, depending upon the profession and everything, there's always going to be something that's going to make it harder. So if you're already giving less to something else that you want to continue, then how are you going to continue it? So you have to reassess. You have to, if you want it to be a priority. At the end of the day, and this might be an old school mentality, but I believe this, at the end of the day, there could have been something that you did differently to make yourself have that time to do it, right? And one thing I'll always tell Bhargav and Sanjay is, I'll say, if you have an exam tomorrow and you have all these things, this like paper due tomorrow, you're going to be up till 4 a.m. to work, right? You're not going to not do the work. So let's say that you started working at 4 p.m. and you're working until 4 a.m. Work at 5 and work until 5 a.m. and practice from 3 to 4. Because if you end up doing the practice in the beginning, you're not going to be able to compromise that. You're not going to compromise your schoolwork. When are you ever going to compromise your schoolwork? You're never going to compromise your schoolwork. So the fact that you're doing your schoolwork first means that you're okay with compromising the music practice. And if you're okay with compromising it now, then you're going to only be more and more okay going forward. And maybe that's not how it works for different people. But for me, this is just what I always used to do, and it works for me because the reality is I am okay with compromising a day of practice. It's not the end of the world for me. if I miss a day of practice. Like, is it really the end of the world? That's the first thing I'm going to table if I have a whole day. I'm going to say, okay, I have all these things. Okay, I guess I can't practice today. How often can I afford to do that?
So Kamalakiran, I'm gonna. Well, this is kind of for you, but kind of for everyone as well. So this is a question that, I mean, some people don't like being asked, or some people are okay with answering. But I'm just gonna ask it because we're having such an informal chat. I'm gonna play a devil's advocate like Ranjan. What, like, the modern mentality is that anyone can do anything, and I disagree with that. And people I'm not a pessimist, I promise. But I think people are like, aim for the stars, and like, you know, you'll get there, and with hard work you will reach it. And that, you know, you will do it. And that's that kind of mentality. You can do everything, you can excel in everything. And we're, you know, ever more connected than ever before, right? So we see all our peers who are the same age excelling in everything. But actually, that's us guys, or whoever we see online, is a very relatively small sample compared to like the other people who are also there enjoying their music or whatever field it is. So how important is it for like anyone, even from like relatively early stages, without being pessimistic, being realistic of what each individual is capable of? Because like every kid has like strong ambitions, and we shouldn't like crush anyone on what they can do and what they can't do. And I agree, hard work and luck plays a lot of, you know, factor, or whatever people believe in prarabdha karma, or whatever people want to view it as. But when is it important, at what stage, to say, okay, you have to understand that, okay, somebody is something. So I'm not, and X is, so for example, Kamalakiran is Kamalakiran, but somebody else is somebody else. And when is it, you kind of to have that understanding that, okay, each one can enjoy their music and be the best that they can. But often we say, oh, I want to do what they're doing. Or that's when the issue comes in. And I think that's what leads to a huge amount of disappointment amongst at least, you know, amongst peers that I've known, or kids, even throughout my childhood as well. So I think, how, you know, when is it important for Kamalakiran, you teach, and for all of us to like give our students that sense of realism, or like that understanding, without being pessimistic? What do you guys think?
I'll start, and I will say that it depends on what the student wants.
Yeah.
What do you want with Carnatic music? If it is something you want to stay throughout your life, if it doesn't have to be. Maybe it's not something you want, but if it's something you want to stay with you, then are you going to enjoy the Carnatic music, your own Carnatic music, the same way you do today, if you cannot play or sing the same things you're able to do because of lack of practice? Yeah. If the answer to that question is yes, then fine. If the answer to that question is no, then clearly you have to do something about it. And at the end of the day, I fundamentally believe that it's not that you couldn't stay. If you could stay up till 4 a.m., you can stay up till 5 a.m.
Yeah.
You just didn't want to. And I think it's okay it's okay. It's okay to not want to do it if you can admit to yourself that, no, I did not want to do it. Why are we so scared to say we didn't want to do it? Why do we think that it's some judgment thing? I mean, you're right, Bhargav. I will judge Bhargav if he says he didn't want to do it, but he will never say he didn't want to do it. He will only say that he couldn't do it. And I think that's where I'm saying it's okay to say you didn't want to. I won't say anything at that point. There's nothing I can say if you say you didn't want to make the priority that day to do it. It's okay. Maybe you couldn't do it, but you couldn't do it. You couldn't do it because you didn't want to for what you thought is important for that day.
But perhaps we want,
right? Maybe that's a wrong.
But perhaps.
Yeah, go. Sorry.
Yeah, no. I was going to say perhaps we want things that we're not prepared to make sacrifices for, or do things, right? Which is the classic case of like.
But then you have to admit that. You have to admit that I'm not prepared to make the sacrifice.
Correct. Yeah.
Or not.
That's a very good point.
You're not prepared to make that sacrifice, and that's okay. I'm not going to force you to make that sacrifice.
Yeah.
I think it's wrong to force it. I absolutely think it's wrong to force it. I absolutely think you have to be real about it. But my version of being real with him, or any of them here, is that, or even with myself, my version of being real is, this is the same thing. For me, it's the flip side with studying for a test. If I want to not study for that test, it's because I didn't want to study for that test. I really just didn't want to. I wanted to do music that day, and I think it's okay, because then at that point you're accepting the consequences that come with your decision. If the decision is you're not going to practice, and now when it comes to someone like Bhargav, who I know wants Carnatic music to be something throughout his life, his college essay is about how music is incomplete, like he's incomplete without music. If that's the case and you want music to be there throughout your life, then if you really want it, you have to make the sacrifices for it, which means you have to practice that hour. You have to find that hour to practice. If you're unable to make that sacrifice and you still want it, then you can't have the cake and eat it too. Like that, you just have to be real about it. I want it, and this is not something that I might not be able to have it in the way I want it. Maybe I should just listen. Maybe I should just do different things. But we have to be okay with saying that this sacrifice leads to this consequence. This leads to this consequence. And at the end of the day, it's really what we wanted to do. Really, that's where I boil it down to. I think it's as simple as that. I think, and many people, many students will be like, no, I want to. Like, I really want to. And I'm like, fine, you want to, but then you don't want to do it. Not even you don't want to. Maybe you're unable to do it, but really unable comes with you don't want to, right? If Pinakapani Garu didn't want to do that many things, he wouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
Because he thought teaching is important, he thought performing is important, he thought being a doctor is important, and he thought fitness was important. He could fit it all. If at any point he thought one of those things, I don't want to put as much effort into it, he wouldn't have.
Yeah.
So it's okay to say that you don't want to do it and admit it.
Yeah.
And then accept the consequences that come with it. You can't be wishy-washy. I'm very like I have a very black and white mentality when it comes to this. Maybe it's completely wrong, but this is the fight that me and Bhargav and Sanjay, that all the students we have all the time. It's not really a fight, but it's always them coming in saying this, and I'm like, really, like.
So I'm going to bring the money word in, because that's the big thing on right now on the minds of performing musicians, obviously. You know, maybe for many of us who have professions, you know, have professional life outside of music, it's not an immediate concern, but obviously we're not able to dedicate then 100% of our time to music, right? It's a given in that case. Nowadays with COVID and online concerts and this and that, basically it seems like the impetus to pay musicians for what is a phenomenally difficult and you know, a skill that has taken years and years of hard graft to build up. Basically, it's very difficult to understand how so many people in the performing arts, Carnatic music or otherwise, are going to actually put food on the table, right? Fundamentally, I mean, there's been stories, you know, in the UK, there's been reports of, you know, a third of performing musicians are considering giving up, or maybe even more, giving up doing music for good. And so, you know, again, is it necessarily that they don't want to be musicians, or they're, you know, are we entering a realm of necessity here, where sometimes things are, you know, dictating that actually you can't do this because you won't eat if you do this?
Absolutely. And when I mean that, I mean it's about what I very much meant when it's about balancing time, and when it's having 50 different things, then at that point you're going to do, but even that, it's a necessity to study for a test and get through like a exam. But that necessity really, if you're going to study for this long, I mean, it's also how much of a necessity it is to keep your music intact. It happens with what music is to you, right? If music is just a performance thing, then yes, that necessity will, I mean, the necessity could change. So let me first preface this by saying none of us have the authority to say anything on this matter, because we don't know what it's like to be in that situation. None of us here know what it's like to be in that situation of depending on music as a form of living, and the frustrations that can come with not making that money. And maybe that means that you don't want to do music. Maybe that music itself is frustrating. We don't know what it's like to have that. So any claim that we make is going to be from our perception and not really anyone else's. That being said, I do know that many people are going into teaching at this time, when performances become less, because people want to teach and, you know, get it that way. I think that's a form of getting other source of money, or getting a side job. I'm not really sure what happens. Again, as I said, because we're not in that situation, I don't know if I can make that claim.
Yeah, no, I know quite a few people who are actually professional Western popular musicians and things in Cambridge who, yeah, it's a very difficult situation now. So yeah, genuinely interested in how this is perceived. I mean, I guess a lot of Carnatic musicians in our circle will have another career or you know, a kind of professional life. So maybe it's something that we haven't had to confront, but
But I think it was it is extremely ignorant to say that, oh, it's about what you want when it comes to that, when it comes to necessity, when it comes to bringing food on the table, when it comes to, it can't be about what you want at that point. I'm talking about very much at a student level.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And to that, I think it becomes a little difficult to know what really goes on in that sphere. We know that's political, it's social, it's economic. Yeah. Which are the artists in who are the artists that in Carnatic music that don't make money right now? The Nadaswaram artists, the Tabla artists, I mean, how many people are learning Nadaswaram? Where do they turn to? I think that becomes very ignorant to say it's about what you want at that moment, because we know that they all want music.
And that's the thing, they're the ones who have actually I mean, not just them, like even if you're taking an orchestra, members of orchestras in you know, Western cities, you know, they literally have decided to live lives of, you know, in situations where they have dedicated their entire life to music. They've made that conscious decision. I'm going to play, you know, play on a freelance basis for whenever there's a gig available. And now it's almost like, well, yeah, I made the decision to dedicate my life to this, but I just can't do it because it's unhealthy. I mean, it's bad for public health, right? And so it's just, I really wonder how we will support going forward people nurturing music, even as a thing that they do whilst they have another source of income. If, you know, if music doesn't have some kind of economic value or some kind of economic return for people, it's just, we're all in a very difficult position.
It comes to us, it boils down to us. I think it boils down to what we do with these musicians, what we want to do with music. I think really the future of music does lie in us, in the sense that we have the power to change really what the perception of serious music is. We have the power to bring Nadaswaram music into light. We have that. You know, LCF is a place where you guys really decide who comes on the show, on like these talks and things. You guys have that. You know, in DC, I mean, I really do have the power with, you know, the contacts that I have to really bring different music into light, bring these musicians. Now, how much is it practical in you know, we're saying this provided that all the artists that we are wanting to bring have the same technological. We make so many assumptions.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, we make so many assumptions with all these claims, and I think it's important to just be aware of the fact that there is a completely different side to this, and that side cannot be ignored when we talk about Carnatic music, and being aware of the privileges that we have when we are performing. Whether that's economic, any privilege that we have to be aware of that and just say, okay, this exists and there's something else there. What is it we can do to make that gap less and make that gap even less, more or less? Because it should ideally be about what you want in the end. Even though it's not about what you want, it's about necessity. It should ideally be about what you want. And for students, of course, it really, I mean, for like all of us, I feel like it really is how much time we can put in. That's really what it boils down to for us. How much time can we and do we want to put in? And if we're not putting in the time that we're putting in, why are we choosing not to put that time? In the end, it is a choice at some level for us, even though we make it a necessity. But when it actually becomes a necessity, I really do think with this platform that we have so much to be able to just change perception. And it's very idealistic, but we can change what good music is. We can change what serious music is. You know, we can bring artists who, we can give equal importance to artists of different, you know, genres. We can give equal importance to Nadaswaram artists. We have so much that we can do, and I think we have to just make it happen. Because again, I think a lot of that necessity has to do with what their necessity will change based on what we want. If we want more Nadaswaram artists, then we will get what we can. We have the power again to make the choice to bring the Nadaswaram artists here. That's kind of the good and bad part of it. The bad part of it is that they're completely dependent on where they get the concerts, because they can't just go live on their Facebook. But we also do have that power to make that a norm, I feel like.
Yeah. Absolutely. Really important point. Yeah.
So slightly deviating, but talking about prioritizing and the want and the necessity to practice, maybe that means staying the extra hour. It's all obviously very much interlinked with your motivation and your drive to practice and your motivation in music. So in this current climate, where it's not so easy to meet up with your music friends, it's not so easy to obviously play live and perform live, it's a complete different field, isn't it? How do you guys stay motivated during this time? Because I think that's an issue that many students have in a normal year, in a normal day-to-day basis, but in this pandemic it's harder than ever, really. So how do you guys stay motivated?
I'm actually going to ask this to Bhargav, if that's okay. One, because he's been silent too long. And two, because I realized, Bhargav, are you here? Can you hear me? Oh yeah. I realized that by saying all these statements about, about what you want and what I want, I've completely shunned the idea of what goes through his head when he actually is making these decisions of when I'm going to practice, when these people do it. And I think it's important to be able to, maybe I'm missing something because I don't go through these things. Maybe it was different for me. So one, Bhargav, how do you stay motivated, to Marthangi's question, but also to what I said about priority. Is what I said right? Maybe I'm wrong, and that's okay if I'm wrong, but I'm actually curious because I've never, usually in class it's just me yelling about this, but it's never about, I've never given that chance. So let's do this here. You have the whole floor to prove me wrong if I am wrong about it.
Okay. So the motivation thing. So obviously it's so in the summer, what helped a lot was like we all are like Kamalakiran organized like these group practice sessions and workshops that basically almost every day from 4 to 6 p.m. and which would go even longer than that. But like that helped us, and he would give us different things to do. Like he would either, sometimes he'd give us a pallavi to do throughout the session. We would have to come up with ideas and show it to him at the end, or even just other days where we just practice, and then he would give us exercises to do. And he was like, send me recordings of this exercise, whoever can do this exercise. And those kind of like, even those small interactions just helped me stay motivated. And even now, now that even like it's harder without in-person concerts, that's also something that definitely look forward to. But even with the Zoom concerts, I get more like time to focus on my own playing instead of accompanying, which I love to do. I love to do both. But I get time to focus on what my own idea, which really helps me stay motivated. And even like, and now to go on to what KK asked me to say, yeah, there was like sometimes I didn't practice for like 2 or 3 days, and then I would sit down and I would not be able to play like simple things, and I would just be like, why can't I play this? Why am I not able to play this simple thing? And it's because I haven't been practicing. It's actually kind of crazy when you come back after not practicing, how much you lost, or like how your fingers can't do like the simple things you could do like 2-3 days ago. So that like now, even though I still have a lot of work, I try to keep at least 10-15 minutes or more based on how much time I have to just at least practice, keep my fingers in touch, so at least I don't lose that, you know. I mean, and I also try to listen as much as I can if I'm not able to practice that much. At least try to keep something in the background so I can at least be involved with music every day. So yeah.
But my question is, do you agree with me that it's a want? Like, is it a conscious, okay, I'm not going to do this, or is it really, I can't? Because there might be something in you that's saying, I really can't set aside more time. is that the case, or is it really that I'm choosing not to set aside more time because I'm able to make these other things easier?
I don't think it's really a want. I mean, I obviously do want to practice. That's not like something I'm not choosing. Like, I don't want to practice today because I don't think I see fit. I do want to practice, and I would like to practice every day. But also, I think you mentioned earlier, you said if you don't, sometimes if you don't practice, like if you just don't start practicing and just say, oh, I'm going to do it later and keep working on your other stuff, you just end up not doing it. So I think that's something I have to start doing myself. But I don't think it's necessarily something that I just don't want to do.
It
I think
ends up happening that way.
it ends up happening that way. Yeah. Like I plan for like a time, like I'll start doing my homework and I'll plan, okay, I'll take a break from my homework here, but I just don't end up doing it. And that's obviously my fault. But, you know, I think if I just start out practicing and then go to my homework, you know, I feel like that would definitely help me. But I don't think it's necessarily a want. I don't think.
Yeah, maybe it was wrong of me to say it's a complete want for everyone, because I don't think it's a conscious happening either. I think that's important. I made it seem like you're consciously saying, okay, I'm gonna leave that out, but I think it just ends up happening that way because it's the easier one to leave out. It's the more obvious one to leave out. Maybe that's the better way of stating it. But to go back to your question, anyone else about COVID and how we're staying motivated?
I think what Bhargav was saying, I think the key is the interaction, and you're still keeping that interaction, so before it was in person, now you managed to keep that through Zoom. But yeah, Sahana, I interrupted you there.
Oh no, I was just gonna say basically the same thing. Like in class too, Subhash uncle really challenges me. Sometimes he'll tell me to play something and it'll completely flop when I play it. Like it'll be so bad that the next week, every day I'll practice that one thing until I'm like, okay, this is slightly better. This is one area that I've at least improved on. And building off of that, I like to kind of make mental lists of what I need to improve myself. And I think the Zoom concerts really helped with that because like Bhargav said, it's mostly focusing on yourself, and you can really see your weak areas when you're just playing by yourself. For example, getting more flow in swarams is something that I'm trying to do, and having that in the back of my mind when I'm practicing kind of helps me structure a practice that can lead to that area being worked on and potentially fixed in the future. So I think self-motivation and having really productive classes with Subhash uncle are some of the things that motivate me.
Self-motivation, that's a tough one.
Very tough.
That is a tough one, right?
I mean, if we like set a goal, like I want to really explore this item, like I want to explore this Swarajati or this Kriti or something in this short amount of time, then I mean, you'll kind of, if you really have that kind of drive to do it, you will definitely do it. You'll find a way to do it.
So one thing is, if you have classes, you're automatically motivated because you have to at least learn it to show, right? You have to learn it to just show, like, oh, I learned this song, I'm going to show you, like, you have to show the guru. So at least that's something keeping you going, I think.
Yeah. But I think it's also a case of being inspired by the music that you feel like, even to want to have a to-do list of what to change or what to improve on, you need to feel inspired by that music, and you have to have that inner drive to want to improve. And that, I guess, goes back to do you want music enough for you to prioritize that and put that in your practice or your daily practice, I think, yeah. But it's interesting to know how I think that just highlights the importance of interaction within the music circle, and that's what's really key, I think, to be inspired to actually practice daily.
Yeah, even just hearing someone else talk about their strategies for motivation and stuff. Hearing all of you talk about, oh, I've got this on my to-do list, you know, Sahana, you gave an example there, and it just makes you go, oh yeah, I should probably do that too, you know. And it's not competition, it's more just you know, you realize what's out there, and it's about people, isn't it? Music, that's why talking to each other helps you realize that, you know, you connect with people by talking to them and sharing their experiences.
Absolutely. And even if you're, so, I mean, I completely agree that interaction is the biggest thing. Let's say interaction is cut. We don't have interaction. We don't have internet. I don't know, we have some apocalyptic time where we have no internet and no way to like talk to people. How can you stay motivated? Many people will come to me and say that I don't know what to practice at this point because I learned the song. I did everything I had to do for class. I don't have any concert coming up. Um, do I practice? I mean, I can review other songs, but how can I stay motivated? My biggest reply is I'll always like put on an MSG recording or my guru's recording or Lal Gudi recording and be like, if I can do everything that they've done, then I can say that I have nothing else to practice. If there's something that's happening there that I can't do, there's something I can reach for. Absolutely. And then even at that level, I learned that MSG at the age of 90, not 90, 80, whatever, 80, like 78, like late 70s, early 80s, every day morning he would practice Saveri Varnam on one string and two strings. So, there's always something, because he's like, okay, like now with age, I want my fingers to be able to keep up with. Yeah. So with different things, there's something that you can always something. Yeah. You can find yourself to be motivated by saying, I can't do this. I want to be able to do this. At least that can be a starting point to get motivated, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And I think just maximizing on when the going's good, like, is probably one thing that we probably just don't do enough. Like, when things are great and, we take it for granted and we just sort of sit back on it and we let the status quo kind of carry on. But I think when we have like even those extra half an hours or hours or things where we have that opportunity to do it, or, we are able to do it, I think it's probably important to fight to make that time and set it aside, because there might be circumstances where that won't be your priority to practice, or you may not physically be able to practice, and then that bank balances, someone was telling me recently, what you have in the bank is really kind of comes into play later on down the line as well, because you just build on that, right? You just, right. Even if you're rusty, like the muscle memory is gone, or like the chords are rusty, those things come back like with practice. But the actual music, the jnanam and what you've built up over the years, that doesn't just leave you, like that stays with you, and you just build on that. So I guess just maximizing when the chips are up, and then kind of doing things that you can when you're not able to, even if that's what we were saying, listening to loads of music. So like, so even in the year I couldn't sing, like I lost my voice, you just have to stay in the loop. So like listen to your class recordings, I listen to Savita sing, all the time. She'd be learning new songs, and as frustrating as it is when your sister's learning all these songs that you want to and you're not able to, you kind of just, you can learn off that. And now, like, when I'm able to sing again, it's like I can sing those songs without having even practiced them, because I heard her sing them so many times.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, exactly. So I guess, yeah, practice can come in like many different forms, not just the physical thing, and like listening, obviously, which we've discussst extensively today, is one of them.
And when you were unable to sing for a year, that's not that's not a want at that point. It's not like I don't want to. You can obviously
exactly
want to sing and put the time
so
aside.
so much. It was painful.
And I'd go further to say that this conversation that we're having would not have happened if COVID didn't exist, right?
Yeah.
Like
100%. Yeah.
Like we're not interacting with people that I interact with every day, but we're interacting like across. I mean, I think that's one of the good things that can even continue past COVID, even when normalcy comes, is this could probably continue.
For sure.
No, I'd say that this whole like self-motivation thing is more important now, because it's so easy for someone to comment on your like, your concert, like you sound like MSG, but how much does that really mean? Like, so that whole self-motivation and knowing that there's so much more for you to explore, and that the fact that music is always like 1,000 levels above you, that's, that self-motivation is just so important.
It is.
Yeah. And I mean, it's kind of, everyone's circumstances are different. So some people like, we have like larger bubbles, networks and communities to share music with, and you guys have, been fortunate to have your evening sessions, you were saying, with Kamalakiran and Practice. But, I guess there are people around who just don't have those networks, who might not even have the communities to reach out to, or don't feel that they are in a position to be able to reach out and just message somebody.
Have the technological.
Exactly. So, I guess hopefully in some way, shape or form, these kind of conversations, and even for someone to be able to access these chats and conversations, they need the technology or the ability to go to YouTube and watch this.
That's why I think it's always important to acknowledge the privilege that we have and just say
absolutely.
that this is what works for us. But we have to realize that there are people in a boat where none of this works. And then what happens there? That is something that I think is a thing that should always linger.
Yeah.
As long as we have it in our minds, then, you know, we actually start to do something about it.
Exactly.
Now, I was going to say, maybe we can also like talk about practical things that people can do. So, you know, you talked about your sessions that you're having. So maybe what kind of things do you do? What kind of practices, techniques, exercises do you do? I think that will be quite useful as well.
So you're talking about practice methods.
Yeah, so techniques, exercise. So, you know, the interactive sessions that you guys do, what kind of things do you actually do?
Sasanka, I mean, you guys can take that, because I basically started those sessions as a way to keep that motivation going.
Yeah.
So I do think all of these things are streamlined. There are different things that you can do to work on different aspects, but I'll let them take it.
Yeah, so at first, I know we worked on a lot of fundamentals. So he actually gave this challenge at the very beginning because I knew at least I was rusty on like alankarams and like the upper octave and stuff. So he said, Kamalakiran, that is, he said, go with your metronome and try to keep building up speed with alankarams. So we did that. And then for the next couple of months, we focused a lot on manodharmam development as well. So Pallavi, manodharmam development, as well as making your swarams and alapanas sort of structured, like going around a note instead of just up and down in a loop. So yeah.
I was just gonna say, like, even past fundamentals, one other thing he did was, I mentioned like Pallavis. So what he would do is he would give us or he would split us into like breakout rooms and or put like 5 of us in each room, and then he would give us each sometimes a different pallavi or the same pallavi, and then he would tell us to come up with whatever you can, whether that's like figure out the column or figure out some codified idea or some four-way, or do whatever you can, be as creative as you can, and then he would come back after an hour and show him what you got. And then sometimes if he wasn't happy with what we got, he would be like, this is how I would approach this pallavi. And then the next day he would give us another pallavi and tell us, okay, using the structure that I told you yesterday, now come up with something. So that really helped us. I think that I can say for everyone that really helped us learn how we can approach pallavis and what we can do in pallavis.
And then I also, of course, we did workshops type of thing where like it was like a large group setting, everyone mutes. People worry about like how can we do like teaching on Zoom. I'm not sure if this works perfectly. Might not be a foolproof method, but have like during these 4 to 6 sessions, I'd teach a song, and so everyone would be on mute, and one person would unmute and play. I mean, I'm singing, and that one person is repeating, and I only hear one person repeating, but everyone is repeating at that time. They're taking from the corrections that I give the one person.
Yeah.
And then that one person shifts, whoever that is, based on different ways. That helps. We sometimes just go through one alapana fully. I mean, these are all like things that everyone does. You know, start with an alapana, see where it goes amongst different people. With Kalpana Swarams, one thing I'll do is we'll go like round robin, like everyone will go one by one. And by the last person, I would have typed in a new restriction. So I'd be like, let's say it's Atana, you can go Atana Kalpana Swarams itself is a restriction, first of all. And then I'll say Ma Parisa, completely banned. Don't use Parisa at all. And sing Kalpana Swarams in Atana. Right? So it's really forcing you to not. Then I'll say, okay, now start at this note or start at this note. Or within one avatanam, I want you to touch the lowest octave to the highest octave that you can go to. Still no Parisa. Or no carves. Let's go through no carves and let's see what you can do. So just way of building flow. And a lot of it was manodharmam oriented. I mean, of course, composition oriented is always there. Like teaching, that didn't really change. That happened the same way. But I feel like these are like streamlined ways that can actually help you get better at one thing. Yeah, I think that's what we did for the most part. Did I miss anything? I don't think I missed much.
Maybe also like layer training and being able to appreciate Karnataka when you haven't learned Mridangam, or you haven't had layer training, because that's definitely something I struggle with. Because I find it very difficult to appreciate Mridangam, and on stage when some Karnataka or Kurapa is happening, I find it hard to understand what's going on. So
yeah, and I think I spoke about Gokulanna. He does these listening sessions, basically every Friday, where it's like a guided listening, where everyone gets on, and like either me or him, we like lead the session, and we'll just kind of play it, and then let people try to see what was there, like what did you find. So that's definitely something you can do. We've done that in our sessions as well. I think just being able to streamline each session for a certain thing, like today, this is what we're going to work on. This is what we want to get better on. This is what we have to interact with. I think a lot of the best improvement can actually happen when we're not performing right now. It's actually like a blessing in disguise for us, not because we're not financially dependent on it, and not like as students of music. I think it's a blessing in disguise that we're able to just slow down and really work on the things that we have to work on.
Yeah. Completely. I was just gonna quickly interject. I probably have to dash in 5 minutes because we've got puja tonight, so I hope you guys don't mind.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I was gonna say it's like a good kind of period to kind of self-reflect and see where our own, like, what needs to be improved as like a priority. As somebody said, so each one has their own kind of things that they need to work on. For example, like one of my favorite, I don't know, maybe I'm just obsessed with this as a type of practice, but like, so for grip, I'll just practice in Aditalam, like Varnams, but then the first half will cycle between Tishram second, Chatram second speed. But I just love it because for the Atatala Varnams, so then it'll just, I don't know, it just gives you like a variety of different, it gives your voice like a really good workover as well, like through the practice. And kind of has helped my grip over the last year, or no, not well, obviously not in the last year, but before that, and now in the last couple of weeks again. So I guess each one can streamline. I was reading this really interesting interview. KVN sir had done an interview with Shruti magazine. I don't know what year this was in, but I came across it again last night actually. And he was talking, obviously KVN sir's voice is like something that we all like celebrate widely, and his like technique as well and aesthetic. So I think the interview from Shruti magazine was saying, so what do you do? How do you practice? Like, how do you maintain your voice, and how do you streamline it? So he said, all this like getting up at like 4 o'clock in the morning and doing akaram practice and like working up to Tarastha and stuff, I'd never done, he said. I could do a small amount of practice in the Mandrastha range, and then only later on in the day, if I'm thinking, I just like, present like a short concert type of thing, starting with slow songs in the lower kind of ranges, and then only building up after that. And he was like, if my voice isn't like in tip-top shape, I think Padma, he was saying in the interview as well, because she was around, she was like, KVN sir just didn't sing. He was just like, no, I'm not going to push it at all. And it was like, it was interesting to see how he like approached that, because I just had this view that everyone just sits and like practices 8 hours a day and stuff. And I think I was just under that impression, as many people are, if you don't really know what different people's practice routines are. It was interesting to see how like KVN sir approached his practice as well back then, and the things he kind of did to maintain it. But it was just it's kind of finding that balance of taking care like holistically, like making sure that like push. It's a fine balance, isn't it, between overdoing it on the practice side and the performance side, and then underdoing it as well, and finding your own individual balance. Because like so many people, like even I know so many people who just don't particularly need to practice as much to like deliver like a really what my opinion would be like of good music, whereas other people would just need to originally like properly work to get the same effect or impact and even satisfaction with it. And it's like finding our own individual balance of what we require to get the most out of it, really. Everyone's gone very quiet. What did I say? Is that everyone just
contemplating that? No, we're just contemplating.
Reflecting.
That was really cool.
because like for example, like Kavian sir was like saying, so he's actually gone through the exercise he gave his students. I hope you don't mind for like 1 minute here. So like he'll start off and he said take your shruti, right? So, so it's like start in that shruti, but start on like the don't push, don't like provide any force, just like sing the minimal sort of sound you can do. So, and then repeat that in all the different sounds, so E, U, A, whatever, O, Makaram, and then work through until you get to Pa, and so like normal Pa in the normal range. And then he was basically like, once you've warmed that up with just like your long notes to basically give it a working over, you don't need to like go anywhere near Tarastai at all, like in the morning period, like to actually warm it up. And just that, and I even practiced that, and I was like trying it and to see if it would work, because like they logically you're like, oh, will your voice warm up if you don't like practice it in the upper ranges? But actually, like surprisingly, so like spending all morning going, and then you get to evening, like you just maybe talk as well, that warms your voice up through the day, and then you get to evening and it's like it's like where did that shouldn't be warmed up right now, but like the range is like so much better because you built it up. So I don't even understand the mechanics of the voice. I know people
I mean, not very applicable to me. Actually, it is applicable to me. I always hate my singing voice.
See, it was like it's like a lot of Hindustani musicians, right? And they're like so much of their singing is like just the plain notes. But then we always say as Carnatic musicians, it's like the standard line is, oh, look at their voices. Like, why does the timbre of their voice sound very different to ours? And inherently we have like more gamakams, brigas, and those things. So I guess like maybe, I don't know, there's obviously some method in Kavian sir's warm up exercises and stuff. So yeah, I find all those interviews from like Shruti magazine from like 50 years ago really useful. They're so good, because like all these guys, how else are we going to find out what they actually did, right? We listen to the end product.
Lectums and interviews are some of the best things to listen to. And I think, I mean, it's also like you can see that they also streamlined their practice. It's not just about playing for the class. They really had different things that they did to make different things work. And I think it's important to say, okay, today if I want to work on Layam, this is what I'm going to do for Layam. This is what I'm going to do for my voice. This is what I'm going to do for my fingers. And that's, I think, important.
Yeah. No, exactly. And like even so I was reading somewhere S. Kalyanaram says, so he'd like take a ragam and that would be 5 hours then. It wouldn't matter what time, like even if it was like 10 p.m. he'd be doing that, and whoever was there, like you know, from his co-artist side, would just after the kacheri, they'd just be like going for Shankaramanam round 2 again for like 5 hours in the evening. But it was just kind of like almost going with what you want to do at that time, rather than putting that rigid thing saying, oh, I must do my Akaram practice or my Varnam practice or my Sarli Varshas now for my thing. It was it was like very organic.
It has to do with Sahana's to-do list too. Like, this is what I think I want to work on, and then what I'm going to work on today. Like, that's how I'm going to work on it.
Yeah, it's just very organic, right? It was like, this is what I want to do today, and that's what I'm going to, you know, kind of enjoy. So I find those interviews like really nice, because otherwise, like, we hear the end product and I'm just like, oh, how did Ramnath Krishnan sing like that? And I mean, like, so many people have just said like, oh, just accept it. He sang like that and that's it, like just enjoy it. But like, no, it's like, how, like what did he do to like produce that?
I mean, this is in the most humble way possible. This is a very humble thing, but I think it's possible for all of us to streamline that. I think it's okay to say, you know, we say like we can't reach like 2%, which it's absolutely right. We can't be as good as them. Sure, I think we should aim. I think we should definitely aim to say, I think it's okay to say I can do everything that he's done and this is how he did it. I'm gonna try. That's the only way we're gonna have the motivation to try and even reach for that. I don't think we should stop ourselves from reaching for that. I think there are very streamlined ways that we can get there.
I agree. The long-term goal. Can you still hear me? Because one of my headphones died. Okay. One of the having the long-term goal, and then just like the being able to simultaneously just work away in the present as well, and not get too disheartened. Because like ultimately, you know, Swamiji from the Ramakrishna mission, the Swami Dayatananda that we spent a lot of time with, he often says like, you see all the birds flying, right? And then there's often like birds flying even higher, and they fly in like different levels in the sky. And it's like, aim for the one highest. It doesn't matter. You might fall like a little bit short, but at least because you've aimed so high, you're like, you'll get somewhere along the way, right? So
Yeah, exactly. I completely agree there.
So yeah, that's interesting. But do you guys like have any what was I gonna say? Any recommendations for like lecdems or interesting interviews that you've read recently that you found useful? Pinakapani Sir's one is actually really good. I'm sure everyone's
like Sanskriti series one that they did, Swati Soft, a few years ago. But do you guys have any other things like that where like these teachers or gurus have talked through like how they approach things?
So there's, I think I said there's this one famous one of Brindamas that just came out recently. I think there's a Brindama interview. Was very interesting to see her perspective of a lot of things, but also like how she's saying. I think that you can pick up something from all of these, because at some point, even if they're different perspectives, there's always something that there's something to grapple with, which I enjoy doing a lot. So I think off the top of my head, I heard Brindama's one recently. You can just, I think it's called, I don't know exactly what it's called, but you can just say Brindama Lecdem or Brindama interview. There's, she talks about music. I don't know. Anyone?
Mangodi recently they released one.
It's a very popular one.
Yeah.
Oh, the documentary one where he talks about yeah. Yeah, and then now like today you can go to like Parthika's website.
Yes.
And like I'm talking about like in today's, even that there's so much you can gain from all of those. And the Music Academy lecdems, I think they're all on YouTube now, so it's incredible. You can get a lot from those too as well. So I think while Samkavi like gets that, I think it's important to realize that this itself has increased our interaction with music during this time. Like we might have not even physically played, but the fact that we're in touch with these things, I think, is extremely important. And I do know for a fact, like Sasanka, who's a vocalist, is probably going to take that tip that Adesh gave on KVN Sir about, how to practice. Like that's something, maybe if we didn't have this conversation, we wouldn't have known that, right? Maybe Sasanka knew this, I don't know, but I never told him to do that. So that's something that's, that I've taken, and I think we've all taken something valuable from this. But yeah.
Absolutely, no, it's fascinating to hear. So we subjected Kamalakiran to the rapid fire question treatment. Now it's the turn of his students. So Sahana, Bhargav, and Sasanka, here's the rapid fire round.
Okay, first question. If you were stranded on an island and you can take one song or one recording with you, what would it be?
MSG No Nakanti.
I think that's what I said too.
The apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
I think KVN Varugulamo, which is my favorite song. So
so second question, what has been your most memorable stage moment? It could be either embarrassing or funny or something that you just remember.
I think there was one concert where I played with Kamalakiran, and that's at a wedding, and like we're playing one of Kanyama's Pilanas, and then there was just it was kind of funny. I think there was just like these two little kids who just started dancing in the audience just to the Pilana. I don't know, it was just an interesting experience. I can't really think of anything else on the top of my head though.
I do remember this.
What Tilana was this?
It's a Simba by everyone.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything right now, but I was playing one concert, and this was probably like the first one of the first times I had played out of the state, and I was really nervous, and my string kept going out of tune, and it was really, really annoying, and it was just not fun, but it like turned out okay. But yeah.
Favorite ragam at the moment?
That's too hard to decide. If you can ask Kamalakiran, he'll say that I always say my favorite ragam is the one that I'm learning at that moment. But right now, like, I've had so much exposure to many ragams, I can't decide. I can never decide.
I think mine is Vagadishwari for sure.
Okay, one thing that Kamalakiran has made you do in lesson that you hated.
Sorry, one thing I've made them do in lesson that they've hated?
Or even on stage, like on the spot.
Okay, there's a lot there.
This has definitely happened more than once. I can't focus on a particular moment, but he's definitely taken some ragam that I do not know and starts playing Kalpana. I just have to kind of figure out what's going on and then kind of play along as if I know what I'm doing, but I sometimes don't know what I'm doing. Definitely that.
One that is painstaking but necessary, like gamakams, getting them exact, like playing, like if it's an easy ragam like Shanmuga Priya or something. This happened once. I wasn't getting it, and he was like, okay, keep playing it, and it went for a very long time. So like I said, painstaking but necessary.
You never really know what he's gonna play next. So, I mean, he could tell you one list before, and suddenly, like, as he said, in the moment, it depends on what he feels in the moment. So it could be a completely different list, or he could give no list at all, just to make sure there's no conflict.
Yeah, thank you so much, guys. It's been really, really nice to hear from all of you and to like interact with you guys, and just sort of get to talk about music to people that we normally wouldn't have, talked to about music. And I think obviously we're very fortunate we got all this tech and this time today as well to do it. So thank you for your time. Thank you, Kamalakiran. Thank you, Sahana, Bhargav, Sasanka, and Mataki Sambhavi Ranjan. I think it's been really fun, and I hope we can do a lot more of these, and hopefully next time bring some music into it as well. Maybe some of these challenges that Kamalakiran was talking about, like a raga challenge where we just kind of play a few phrases, and
we can all do it together. It'll be so much fun. Yeah.
Exactly. No, I'm looking forward to part 2 of this.
Yes.
And yeah, take care, stay safe, and hopefully we can not only do this on here, but hopefully when we get an opportunity to do this face to face as well.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much for this.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Take care, everyone. Have a great evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.